الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وبه نستعين ونصلي ونسلم على خاتم النبيين إمامنا وقدوتنا محمد بن عبد الله وعلى الآل وصحبه الكرام أما بعد. Dear all, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. All praises are due to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala who continuously showers upon us blessings after blessings after blessings, mercy after mercy after mercy. La ilaha illallah. And peace and salutations be upon Muhammad ibn Abdullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. My dear brothers, my dear sisters, my dear mothers and fathers, in our last video we discussed the topic of tafakkur. And tafakkur means reflection. For the purposes of this video, I want to share with you all a topic known as tadabbur. And tadabbur refers to deliberation and contemplation, and more specifically over the verses found in the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's verses are divine, and if we contemplate and deliberate over the ayat and verses in the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we will come to learn that there are many more meanings and many more lessons that exist within the verse La ilaha illallah. So yes, you might take an apparent meaning for those who understand the Arabic language, or for those who do not, you would take an authentic translation of the Quran and revise the translation of a particular verse, and you would have appreciated the apparent meaning of the verse. However, if you become specialists in contemplating and deliberating and being attached to the Quran in this way, I promise you, you will find magnanimous lessons that can only be learned once we ponder and deliberate. Know and understand, O servant of Allah and O children of Adam, that Al-Qur'anu ma unzila likay yustama'u ilayhi wa faqat. Wal-Qur'an ma unzila likay yuhfadhu wa faqat. Wal-Qur'an ma unzila likay yuqra'u wa faqat. Bal unzila liyadabbaru ayatih wa liyatadhakkara ulul albab. This book, O servants of Allah, was not revealed so that we could just recite it, was not revealed so that we could just memorize it, was not revealed so that we could just listen to it, right? The main purpose behind its revelation was so that we could ponder and deliberate over the verses of this book. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in His book, Kitabun anzalnahu ilayka mubarakun liyadabbaru ayatih وَلِيَتَذَكَّرَ أُولُو الْأَلْبَابِ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, a blessed book we have revealed to you, O Muhammad, so that they may ponder over its verses. Listen to the word, ponder, deliberate, contemplate over its verses. وَلِيَتَذَكَّرَ أُولُو الْأَلْبَابِ. And so that those of understanding may remember. La ilaha illallah. So it's very important, especially during this month, the month of Al-Quran, that we establish the association with the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So yes, we have a recitation that is specific to completing the ajza of the Quran, and we have a recitation that might include memorizing the Quran, and we have a recitation that includes us reading the English verses, for example, for those who do not understand the Arabic language. But we should have another association that includes us taking a verse from the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, understanding its meaning, asking our local scholar to expound on that meaning. And when we have a comprehensive understanding of this verse, then we spend the day, 2 days, a week contemplating over it, asking why. And this is the reality of contemplation. Why did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say this here? Why did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say or use a particular word here and not another word, for example? Keep on asking why, and when you ask why with the fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, with sincerity solely to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to have this true association with the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will open your heart towards understanding magnanimous lessons that exist within the verses. This is amazing, O servants of Allah, and I promise you that once you get started, you will never stop, and this Quran will never become something that is just a norm something that we recite because it's something that we've been told to do every day. Establish this association with the Quran, O servants of Allah. Ibn al-Qayyim rahimahullah mentions ways that the Quran can be abandoned. And he says that from the ways of abandoning this Quran is to not or to stop contemplating and deliberating over the verses in the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Let us not be like those before us, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that their only association with their book was illa amani, was only to recite it. Only to recite it. La ilaha illallah. But they never ever gave it due diligence and the respect that it deserved. So in this month of Al-Quran, O servants of Allah, ensure that you establish this association with the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Don't be afraid, because tadabbur is not tafsir. Yes, the Prophet ﷺ warned us against explaining the Quran without knowledge. That is tafsir. Tadabbur and reflection and contemplation cannot take place unless we have understood the tafsir and explanation of the verse. So I'm not asking you all to perform tafsir. No, I'm asking you to contemplate and ponder after you've understood the verse. And recall my earlier statement where I said that once you understand the meaning, visit your local scholar and ask him to expound for you, relate to you the tafsir, and once you have a comprehensive understanding of this verse, contemplate, and I promise you, you will be amazed. I love you all for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I end this video with our tagline, and that tagline is: a Muslim is an entity of activity and proactiveness. What are you doing, O servants of Allah and O children of Adam, for Islam and the Muslims, for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. Until we meet again, subhanallahi wa bihamdihi, subhanakallahumma wa bihamdika, nashhadu an la ilaha illa ant, nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilayk. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.